Welcome back to the Tuesday weekend. This week we are talking about substitutions and modifications. And, well, we first talked about when the customers do it. Now we have to be a little honest with ourselves and talk about when we do it. When either the kitchen or the bar runs out of something, or when, well, sometimes a guest asks for something that we don't have. And the example that I have of that in the last few years, I've done quite a bit of bartending. It's usually fun, and unlike the kitchen, I can refuse service if you piss me off. But behind the bar, I try to be as accurate as I can when, a guest is asking for something. But there is one drink that I will admit I have never made correctly. And this is what I would consider, and Nick, correct me if I'm wrong. This is what I would consider to be an old man cocktail, the 7 and 7. It is Seagram's 7 Crown American blended whiskey mixed with 7 Up. This drink is only a thing because it's really easy to remember for the few intact neurons in these 70-year-old alcoholic brains. So I don't think I've ever had anybody under 50 ever order one from me. But anyway, in the couple of years that I was bartending banquets, the casino never stocked Seagram 7 or 7 Up. So I was usually actually pouring a Canadian Club and Sprite. But the current place I'm working at, one of the senior bartenders told me she uses the High West bourbon to use those, which seems like quite an upsell to me.
Yeah. So the big misnomer here, and this has gone on for decades, really, is the big Canadian whiskey is Crown. Mm-hmm. Now, back in the day, it wasn't just Seagram 7, it was Seagram's Crown 7. People thought it was Crown, and then they automatically assumed it was Canadian, which it is not. It's just an American whiskey. And it's not really a bad whiskey. It's kind of nice. I mean, I don't like the harshness of a Jack Daniel's so much. And then when you get past Jack Daniel's, most American whiskeys are actually bourbons. There are a lot of high-end whiskeys, but you don't hear about them much. But yeah, Seagram's is like that kind of base level whiskey. And it's a 7 and 7 is literally just, I mean, I've had it sometimes in bars, sometimes not. If I don't have it, I mean, honestly, the closest thing to Seagram 7 that you're probably going to have in your will if you don't have Seagram's is, unless you have like Old Crow or something horrible, is going to be Jameson. Huh. I mean, it's a whiskey. It's not a sour mash like Jack Daniel's. It's just a straight whiskey. Or Crown would work as well. Yeah, but you'd still be upselling. I mean, Canadian Club, that's actually a Canadian whiskey made by Seagram's. I mean, there are different ways they make these things, because Canadian whiskeys are rye whiskeys. American whiskeys are wheat whiskeys, for pretty much lack of a better term. That's about it.
I've had some of my bartender friends say Jack or Jim. Like
then you're going, again, a sour mash whiskey versus a bourbon there. Versus a regular whiskey. There are 3 different spirits there. That's why it can be so difficult to cover it. And like you said, I haven't poured a Seagram's drink to anyone under the age of 70 in 10 years.
Right.
I mean, it's just not really anymore.
For this one, almost do want to do a taste test for myself and then just pour what I think is the best of those options. But again, my flavor palette doesn't necessarily match the, 70-year-old chain smoker at the casino that I'm serving right now. So
honestly, Josh, if anyone ever says 7 and 7, you just make whatever your well whiskey is in 7.
It's whiskey.
That's what they're looking for.
Yep. At least my current place does actually have 7 Up, so I'll give them credit for that.
There's that. I have people like, you only have Sprite? Never mind. I'm like, okay.
And then I guess from the kitchen aspect, it's a little bit harder to get away with, I feel. If you actually, if you run out of something, it gets 86. I know on the TV evening news, to try to get people to watch, they like to talk about how people mismarket fish and say, sell you a tilapia fillet and say it's cod. But I don't know. I have more than a baseline understanding of fish, and I would be able to immediately tell you that this is not monkfish. This is not the sea bass. I know what a halibut tastes like. I don't, I know there's been a lot of news on that, but I haven't personally seen it in any kitchens I've worked in. Now, okay, the one that I have seen is now substituting lobster in whole or in part for slipper lobster, which is essentially just another member of the lobster family, bigger than a crawfish, smaller than a lobster, somewhere in there.
It's the same pretty much.
Kind of, yeah.
Kinda.
Very similar, especially once it's cooked and say like put onto a lobster roll with celery and onions and mayo.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matt. But yeah, it
No
it
mayo.
blends in. Yeah. But I mean, Matt, are there any big substitutions that you've seen going on in the kitchens that maybe they're harmless, maybe they're trying to get away with something?
I feel like the soy allergy thing that keeps coming on. We already use gluten-free soy sauce for some dishes that we have, so we kind of kill two birds with one stone at that rate. But I love using white soy to season a lot of our food, which is packed with gluten. So it's difficult sometimes when a server comes to me and says, "Well, this person has a gluten and a soy allergy." I'm like, "Well, when you put we season the broth with white soy, and I don't want to give you a version of it that's just seasoned with lemon juice and salt. You know, it's not gonna taste, it's not gonna have the body, it's not gonna have the complexity that you would get from that white soy." And I go, put a couple drops in. I don't think it's gonna hurt the consumer that much. But there's been a couple of times where I've sent out a dish where, oh, I just don't like soy, I don't like gluten, and they end up loving the dish. They're like, "Oh, how did you make this?"
With soy and gluten.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the gluten allergy thing as well. It's when they say they have a gluten allergy, I'm like, okay, you get upset with it. I get that. Celiac is the actual gluten allergy. When someone says they have celiac, I'm like, okay, you can die.
That's
got it. That's when I'm back in the kitchen going like, make this over there. This is very, very, do your thing, do it properly.
One of my friends in Brooklyn is celiac and thought for years she just had this just vague, undiagnosed gastrointestinal issue. And then she figured out it actually was wheat. It was actually gluten that did it to her. But again, true celiacs are rather rare. Gluten intolerances are much, much bigger. And, like Nick alluded to, I do think that's way more to do with what we're spraying on the wheat than the nature of the wheat itself. But I don't want to make anyone feel bad with my cooking. So of course I'm going to try to make it to your liking. But again, if some people's sensitivity is way higher than others.
Yeah, sure. At the same time too, when we're doing substitutions, when we get behind the bar, I generally don't have to worry too much about allergies. I mean, I will have people tell me they have a gluten allergy and then order a grain-based spirit where I'm like, okay, cool, whatever, you're fine. The stuff we usually substitute behind the bar is like, say we run out of grenadine. We just made house-made grenadine at my work this last week. It turned out great. If you run out of ginger ale, you can do the whole Sprite, dash of bitters, splash of Coke to make a ginger ale for a cocktail and such. I mean, most of the stuff that we substitute is either going to be a very similar liquor for what you ordered. Of wine, I mean, those are a little harder. I'll have someone say like, I want a Barbara, and I'm like, we don't have a dry Italian red wine. Right. And they'll get mad at that. And I'm like, we're not an Italian restaurant. You get things like that. But in liquors, it's like, this one tastes like this one tastes like this. Or if someone says, I like this Cabernet, I can like, okay, this Cabernet I have will be very close. I mean, that's not so much a substitution. It's just getting people to take what you have. But yeah, when you have to do the sauces and the sodas and stuff for mixers, like when someone orders a Paloma is made with squirt if you're making it properly. And we actually shockingly carry squirt now, which is great, in cans just to make Palomas, because we do quite a few. But otherwise, you're kind of, your bartender's all of a sudden being a chef. I'm like, okay, I need some grapefruit juice. I need a little bit of simple syrup. I need to add some lime juice to it. You're trying to recreate squirt soda, which is kind of difficult, especially if you don't have the right kind of grapefruit to start with. So, but yeah, I mean, it's
fly too.
Yeah, it's the right limes, everything. It's there's so much stuff that, like when people come up from Mexico and they order that and they use different limes than we use here, They're going to
sure.
have a little more bitter and such. You've got to kind of take that into account and consideration when you're doing that.
Well, and I guess part of my point here is we're not trying to be duplicitous. We're not trying to sneak one over on people, but it is just not possible for every bar to have every imaginable booze in stock. And I mean, even the place in New York where I was the liquor manager and we did stock Seagram's 7 Crown, it moved so slowly that if I could have made the decision to remove it, I would have put some other bottle on the shelf in its place. That was the same time I was stuck with all those flavored vodkas that were huge in like 2007, 2008.
And then
And
it just
I'm
disappeared.
yeah, I'm glad I don't need to stock 3 different brands, 6 different, fruit flavored vodkas that are all fine.
I actually had a guest come in this weekend. She's like, what vodkas do you have? And I'm like, well, we got Absolute, Tito's, Grey Goose, and Belvedere. She's like, well, what European vodkas? And I'm like, Grey Goose and Belvedere. No, what kind of Polish vodka do you have?
Well,
Belvedere.
yeah. Like,
that's not a Polish vodka. I'm like, yeah, I have exactly what you want. And you're still telling me no.
I feel like when a guest comes in and they want modifications and they want the whole nine, it's kind of an awkward interaction at first, right?
Yeah.
Like the kitchen essentially is the waiters, the middle man, and the kitchens, and the bar are the receivers on what they have to do. We're kind of like magicians in a way where we kind of have to, all right, this person has this, 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 and like our job is to make them feel as comfortable as possible because they already feel kind of awkward coming into a restaurant with a little laminated sheet that says I am allergic to 23 things on your menu.
Sure. Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, if I feel like this isn't going to hurt you or I feel like it's not going to do any harm to your body with the littlest amount, I probably still will serve it to you.
Yep. Yeah. Again, I try as much as I can to accommodate you as far as possible. And sometimes I can't. But
I think we can all agree, though, that the general public is just using the word allergy in substitution of what I want. And that's been the biggest problem with my substitute is like, oh, I have an allergy to this. And I'm like, no, you don't. You're eating that right in front of me right now. It's that's been the biggest thing where it just ruins it for the people seriously with allergies who genuinely just want to eat something that won't kill them versus, oh, I don't really like eggplant, so I'm allergic to eggplant now. And then you're like, oh, you can't have this dish either if you're allergic to eggplant. And when you see the look of surprise on their face that they have chosen something that is in a biological family that is all related, and if you're allergic to one, you're allergic to all, you automatically know they are not allergic to it. And that does happen quite a bit, like especially with like the garlic and the onions, where it's like, I'm allergic to onions. And I'm like, okay, well, how about this? And I'm like, sorry, there's garlic in that and it's cooked into the sauce. Like, oh, garlic's fine. And I'm like, okay, fine. Yeah, we'll just do that then. If you say it's fine, obviously you're just being a pain in the ass.
Well, and again, I'm just going to advocate for people to not be picky eaters when they go out, to actually enjoy food. I mean, sure, if it's bad, sure, then you don't have to enjoy it if it's not cooked well. But, maybe try what the chef has in mind, even if it's something that in the past you've tried somewhere else and didn't enjoy, maybe you will here. I know I've had a couple of things. The one that comes to mind is liver and onions. My dad, when I was a kid, used to get beef liver, and he and I were the only two in the house that would eat it. And I thoroughly enjoy it when it's cooked correctly.
Yeah.
If I see it at a little like roadside shack truck stand out in the middle of Wyoming, yes, I'm going to order it there because it's probably done well. But, if I'm at like Shakey's, I don't know. Like there are all sorts of other like, okay, maybe this isn't the place to try it. Sorry, coffee shop in the casino. Maybe. But,
see, I just don't understand the modifications people want, not so much on drinks, but really on food. I mean, I got to say, I'm really impressed by you guys in the kitchen because some of the modifications people ask for, I'm like, were you watching the Food Channel literally right before you walked out the door and said, ooh, that sounds good. I'll see if they can do that when I go to this restaurant tonight. I mean, my liquor modifications, it's just, that's what you want. Okay. It's going to taste absolutely awful, but If you like it, go ahead, enjoy. You know, if that's the drink they want, I just make it because I'm right there and I know I can do that. I mean, if I sent a guest back to you and they were saying the stuff they say to me, you would probably want to kill them. I mean, when I'm out there, I never understood. I'm like, if you're going to go out and eat, don't ask for something and don't make the comment, well, when I cook this at home. And it's like, why would you come to a restaurant and have something you cook at home? I don't get that.
And that's like
exactly.
the thing, you know, like we had a guest come in and do our tasting menu on at the restaurant. This was actually like a year ago. And they put on the reservation notes, oh, we have 2 people who are vegan. So can you alter all 4 courses vegan? So we had a day in advance. We made brand new dishes for those two people especially. After the fish course, the supposed fish course they were supposed to get, we modified it. She told our server that, what is our entree course? And he said a cauliflower steak. Both of them then said, well, we can eat red meat. Red meat's okay for us.
What kind of vegan is that?
Yeah.
I mean, okay. I know one vegan who, I don't know, I guess their cheat food is fish, but their like beef is not. Okay, anyway, whatever.
Yeah, that's pescatarian, and beef is not a substitute in anything vegan.
Just have respect for me enough to not lie to my face. That's what I ask.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you always get people in and they're like, oh, can this be bigger? You know, or can I get more of this? I mean, not only liquor, because it's like, make that strong. And I'm like, go fuck yourself. If you want a double, I charge you a double. No problem. Exactly. Well, it's the same way. It's like, oh, you've only got like a 6-ounce fillet. Do you have like a 12-ounce fillet? And I'm like, we can do 2 6-ounce fillets. Like, oh, will the price be the same? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like Matt said, I've had people say, oh, well, they've ordered like a salmon, you know, with some Brussels sprouts and with some potatoes. And then they come back to me like, whoa, did you put that order in yet? I'm like, no. It's like, oh, well, is there bacon in the Brussels sprouts? And I'm like, no. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like you said, Josh, because I'm vegan. And I'm like, hey, enjoy your salmon. Have it. Yeah, that's great. It never comes up. The people who have these allergies, it's always, you can tell it's a preference when it doesn't come up until after they've ordered, or you bring the food out and they're like, oh, is there this in this? Now, I have had people not do that and take a bite and like, what's the flavor in this? And I'm like, well, it's, you know, soy. We'll say that, for example. And they're like, oh, I have a gluten allergy. And I'm like, lead with that. Just start off the hey, how are you guys doing? Like, hey, we're doing great. Just so you know, I have like a nut allergy to these nuts. And it's like, okay, thanks. I appreciate that. I can work with that.
Oh, geez. You know? Plenty of
times. At the same time, don't order a dish that has those nuts in it.
Most of the places I've worked recently specifically just doesn't have peanuts anywhere in the kitchen or in the bakery. No. Just because that's the biggest, most difficult one to deal with. So sure. Even, I mean, the Italian place, yeah, we had pine nuts. And yes, there is that small subset of people who are allergic to tree nuts. Okay. But basically that was the only nut we had in-house. And that at least made it very easy for the servers when anyone would ask, oh, blah, 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 nuts. They would be able to just say no.
Well, I literally have people asking, why don't you have nuts on the bar, you know, like to snack on? And I'm like, well, first off, we're a restaurant. And second off, because of the allergy. That literally nuts and stuff on bars and having peanuts in bars disappeared almost overnight when the nut allergy became so prevalent that if they're on the bar and you don't wipe the bar down and someone touches it and it's a little bit wet, they're going in anaphylactic shock. You're just like, that's fantastic. Great. They didn't have to digest it. They have to touch it. Super.
So I think on that note, we are going to take one more quick break here. And when we get back, we will talk about what happens when the distributor makes substitutions. So stay tuned.
Yeah.